The Poet. Where Two Ways Met. By Virginia Olson. Acknowledgement: I could not have completed this book without the help of my son, J. Kyle Humphreys. He has loved, encouraged, researched, edited and advised me every step of the way. Chapter 1. The Calling. 9-year-old Ray sat under an old oak tree, in the backyard of their Mississippi farmhouse. As the words flowed through his mind, he scratched them in the sandy dirt with a stick. He didn't often have a pencil or paper, but he felt compelled to write them down. Ray Lindsey didn't understand then, that God was calling him to write for him. When he heard the train whistle blow, he quickly rubbed out the words and stood up to watch the freight train as it made its way down the tracks, which ran just beyond his backyard. It was a common thing at that time in 1926 for hobos to hop the trains and hitch a ride to the next town. They were usually hungry, so when they'd see a farmhouse they would jump off the train and beg for a meal. Ray grinned as a ragged hobo came walking toward him. This one had an old guitar strapped to his back. "We got another one, Mom," Ray hollered. His mother was a sweet Christian woman, and she fed every one of them that came through. Ray made quick friends with this hobo as they sat on the back step and waited for his mom to bring the man a plate of food. The hobo strummed his guitar and sang a few songs for Ray, about his love for Jesus. That day was etched in his memory, and many years later it inspired him to write a song, called The Gospel Hobo. The Gospel Hobo. By Ray Lindsey. Well, the old freight train pulled into the yard, at the edge of our town. Before it hardly came to a stop, a hobo hit the ground. With an old guitar across his back, and a smile upon his face. Said, "Gather round and hear my song, about amazing grace. Well, amazing grace, how sweet the sound, that saved a wretch like me. In a hobo jungle, just out of town, where I bowed a hobo's knee. When another hobo told me about this man from Galilee. Of how he'd change a hobo's life, and make a hobo free. Now I don't want your money, I just want to sing my song. And when them train wheels roll again, I'll be a long time gone. From the beaches of Miami, to the rocky shores of Maine. I'll sing about amazing grace, till Jesus comes again. I've rode the rails through Georgia, and on down through Alabama. Got a lot of friends in Tuscaloosa, and some in Birmingham. But name your town, and I've been there, I've been most every place. But now I'm going back again, to sing amazing grace. On Hobo's Day in heaven, that'll be a sight to see. Ol' 97 waitin' there, for hobos just like me. With Jesus at the throttle, to show us o'er the place. 10,000 hobos shoutin' about amazing grace. Chapter 2. Coming of Age. Raymond Joseph Lindsey was born August 6, 1917 in Sturgis, Mississippi, to Jacob Joseph Lindsey and Ida Bell Hudspeth Lindsey. He had one older brother, Henry Felix Lindsey, and one younger sister, Geneva Bell Lindsey Yandell. He had a lot of friends growing up, and he was popular with the girls. Once, while on a double date, Ray sat in the back seat of his friend's car, with his girlfriend on his lap, his left arm hanging out the window. Another car sideswiped them, badly injuring Ray's arm. He carried a deep scar for the rest of his life. In 1940, his parents bought a large house in West Point, Mississippi. His mom turned it into a boarding house, where she rented apartments to young ladies who were in school there in West Point. Ray had been on his own for several years, but he was very close to his mother, so he visited her there often. At 22 years old, he was quite handsome, just over 6 feet tall, with sandy brown hair. Everyone loved Ray. He was always the life of the party. Several of the girls, living there at the boarding house, tried hard for his attention. But he only had eyes for one beauty, by the name of Catherine Vale. Chapter 3. Catherine. Catherine was a sweet Christian girl, with the face of an angel, and the figure of a model. She was quiet, and very serious about her schooling. She had already suffered a lot of trauma in her life. When Catherine was 4 years old, she found a dynamite cap in her yard. It exploded when she picked it up, causing her to lose parts of 2 fingers, and the first joint of her thumb. Her mother died that same year, leaving Catherine, her 5 brothers, and 2 sisters, to be raised by her father alone. Her father, Richard Lawrence Vale, later remarried a nice woman, who was good to his children. They had 2 daughters, which expanded their already large family. Catherine loved her daddy, and they were very close. One afternoon, 16-year-old Catherine stood at the edge of their yard, watching him plow their fields, with an old horse-drawn plow. When suddenly, a snake frightened the horse. The horse reared up, throwing her daddy backwards to the ground. Catherine watched in horror, as the big plow blade came down, piercing through her daddy's chest. The frightened horse then ran, dragging her beloved father to his death. Catherine had given her life to God, at a very young age. And it was her faith in God, which sustained her through those devastating events. The first day that Ray met Catherine, at the boarding house, he knew that he just had to get acquainted with her. She was everything he had ever wanted, so he took every opportunity to talk to her. There was a new movie in the theaters, called Gone with the Wind. Everyone said it was a great movie, so he asked Catherine to go. After that, they were inseparable. They married, on April 12, 1941. Chapter 4. The Cabin. Very much in love, their first 2 years were spent enjoying their lives together. They lived in a small 2-room cabin near a lake. And spent many hours fishing, and planning their future. Ray often wrote poetry to Catherine, like this one. Roses. By Ray Lindsey. These roses, dearest, that I bring, are just to say to you. You're just as precious as the day I heard you say I do. Emotions rise, and so they fall, and trifles come between. But never can they change this, dear, you're still my rose and queen. Watch. By Ray Lindsey. I watch you in the morning. I watch you noon and night. I watch you when you're angry, and fear, with all my might. I watch you when you're throwing smiles to guys around the place. I just don't want you wrinkling up the makeup on your face. I watch you in your nighties, and then I start to scheme. But suddenly remember, that that's a washed-up dream. I watch you when you go to sales, though sometimes they are fine. For just today I watched your wrist, for $1.89. And on another birthday. Bygone Days. By Ray Lindsey. In bygone days, we've bought the phrase, like I love you, and so. We know before we ope the note, just how the phrase will go. The roses red, the poem goes, and so the violets blue. And repetition has it thus, dear, I was meant for you. And when these words have fallen flat, the deeds are there to see. The note goes in the trash can, for that's where it needs to be. And when the note has been dispensed, the heart cries, give me fact. 1,000 million words I'd trade, for just one little act. So musing on these thoughts last night, the years ran swiftly back. I saw a million bygone words, but not one deed or act. And so today I empty stand, my hands are empty bare. If I should have to prove my love, there's simply nothing there. My heart was gripped, and so I fell upon my knees and cried. For all the years she's shown her love, I haven't even tried. So till the day my hands are full of things I'd like to be, I'll ditch the words and say thank God for loaning her to me. Then one year, on Valentine's Day, he wrote, My Best Friend. By Ray Lindsey. When I was just a little lad, let's say 'bout 8 or 9. My fondest hope was that someday I'd have a Valentine. I wanted one both kind and sweet, and pretty as a pup. And though my case looked hopeless, I never did give up. At times I thought I'd found me one, and I'd write her a note. And she'd write back, and say, now bud, you just go sail your boat. And then I'd say, now see here sis, you're not so hot yourself. I've got a dozen, prettier'n you, that I've put on a shelf. So get yourself a lollipop, and try to pass the time, while I go out and try to find a choicier Valentine. And then one day the picture changed, I found I was full grown. And Cupid stopped to say, come look at something all your own. He introduced me to this maid, and said, it's up to you. Dumbfounded, I said, dear Lord, what's the next thing that I do? With no reply, I just stood there, and drank her beauty in. I knew I had to make a start, but how do I begin? Throughout the months, it hasn't changed, dumb then, and dumber now. But when I'm stuck at making love, she simply shows me how. I guess that's why. I know my love, for her, will never end. This gal's not just my Valentine, say man, she's my best friend. Chapter 5. Committed. Ray joined the National Guard, where he became a quartermaster, and worked as a shipping clerk. He developed a talent with numbers. He could add up columns of 5 or 6-digit numbers in his head, with accuracy. Now, living in Lake Charles, Louisiana, Ray thought life couldn't get any better, when on November 2, 1943, he became the proud father of his daughter, Lenita Ray, who they called Nita. Times were hard, amidst World War II, and money was limited. Ray had been exempt from the military, because of his injured arm. To find work, they moved to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where on January 28, 1946, he was blessed with the birth of his second daughter, Sandra Kay. He labored hard to provide for his family, often working 100 hours a week. Catherine was a loving wife and mother. She was an excellent seamstress, and made most of their clothes. The two little girls were always dressed adorably, with their hair curled and styled. In 1950, the happy little family settled in Hot Springs, Arkansas, which eventually became their permanent hometown. God was the center of their lives, and they were very active in church, where they formed many lifelong friendships. Ray and Catherine both loved to sing. They harmonized well together, and were often called upon to sing special requests in church. Ray wrote the songs, and even composed the tunes. Chapter 6. The Composer. Except the Lord Build a House. By Ray Lindsey. By life's sea on shifting sand I built a castle, with vain hopes that it might rise above them all. While on the rock not far away, the master builder gently said, "Child, a house built on the sand will surely fall. Except the Lord build a house, in vain you labor. One stone upon another cannot stand. Oh, hear his call today, come choose my favor, and escape the woes of those who build on sand. All the day I'd build upon desire for riches, though the cost would leave my neighbor stripped and bare. And while fires of sin would dance at night, I'd lay my plans for fame, that a weary pilgrim soul could never share. But one day I looked toward a cold horizon, for I'd watched my lofty castle fall and burn. Helplessly I watched debris of a million broken dreams drift away on the waves of no return. Then at last I found myself among the barren, at the devil's booth, where things of earth are sold. And 'twas there I heard these words, from one who'd spoke to me before. Child, an ounce of dross will cost a pound of gold. 'Neath the shadow of the rock, heart torn and broken, I bowed low, to call upon his matchless name. Then at last he poured for me the cup of honor, love and grace, that removed my badge of infamy and shame. It's up to you, Lord. By Ray Lindsey. My dark day has ended, so happy I am. So glad I've been washed in the blood of the Lamb. So glad that I told him, the night I prayed through. My life, I surrender, Lord, I give it to you. It's up to you, Lord, I give you my all. It's up to you, Lord, I'll answer your call. It's up to you, Lord, what I shall be. It's up to you, Lord, what happens to me. It's up to you, Lord, if I fall by the way, to lift me again, Lord, each time that I stray. When I've done my best, Lord, and still can't see through, I'll hold to your hand, Lord, then it's all up to you. I can almost see Jordan, my work's about through. The bit that I've done, Lord, I commit unto you. I fear not the crossing, I dread not the span. I'll leave it with you, Lord, and hold to your hand. The Tempest. By Ray Lindsey. Today as I would wait on thee, dear Lord, restore the flame that lights the fires of love divine, and magnifies thy name, that sends the beacon rays across the raging sin-tossed sea, to guide a languid struggling soul to sweet tranquility. I love the harbor of thy love, though, Lord, I cannot stay. The cries of those lost in the storm keep pulling me away. So give me thine own hand each time to guide them through the foam. For I cannot forget the times you saw me safely home. But when the raging storm is quelled, and love has searched the foam, to see if there is yet a one who hasn't made it home, then I'll relax in sweet repose with those who've made it in, to praise his name through countless years for victory over sin. Lord, never let my courage fail, by reason of the swells. For many sink in earshot of the tolling harbor bells. 'Tis such a joy to rescue souls from such a ruthless one. And hear the harbor master say, "Well done, my child, well done." The haunting cries of those out there, in sin's engulfing wave, are pleading, "Bring the lifeboat, and save us from this grave." So I'll renew my vow to serve, till billows are laid low, and till the dark cold depths of sin has ceased to be a foe. Would you care? By Ray Lindsey. Would you care if on tomorrow, you should stand before the bar? And hear your record read before him, to show what you really are? And there'd be no blood of Jesus then, to pay your bill of fare. Tell me, neighbor, just be honest, tell me really, would you care? I can see the crimson stream that's ever flowing. And I still can see the thorn crown, on his brow. I can hear him say it's finished, ere they took him on the tree. Would you care to claim the blessed Savior now? Would you care if he should tell the Father, on that final day, that your sins were never covered, by the price he had to pay? When the cries, "Give us Barabbas," filled Golgotha's cruel air, that your voice rose in agreement, tell me truly, would you care? Would you care to see your loved ones pass before the great white throne, while you had to take the dark road, never more to see your own? Then to hear these final words, "My only son, I didn't spare." Oh, how sad that you rejected, tell me truly, would you care? Blind Bartimaeus. By Ray Lindsey. Blind Bartimaeus sat alone by the wayside, begging for alms of the ones passing by. They told him that Jesus of Nazareth was passing, so he leapt to his feet and came forth with this cry: "Jesus, have mercy on me. Open mine eyes, Lord, thy beauty to see. Touch me, and I shall be clean. Jesus, have mercy on me." The adulterous woman, bowed down in her sorrow, fell low at his feet, and cried out in her shame, "If thou wouldst touch me, then I'd be more like thee, and ever give glory to thy precious name." Today, if you're shackled by vows that were broken, or a sin-ravaged life you have wasted in shame, he stands now in waiting, with welcome and pardon, for the prodigal one who will call on his name. On Mother's Day, May 12, 1963, he wrote this next song, while in Sunday school class. The Valley Between. By Ray Lindsey. I stood on the brink of a chasm so wide, in the darkest of night, all alone. For Satan had said, "You're forever outside, so why fret thyself to go on?" Now there was a time when your Savior was near, and your way was happy and bright. But gone, said he, are the things you hold dear, and gone from thy soul is the light. There I longingly looked, o'er this chasm so wide, far away to my Lord's mountain green. But Satan then said, "You can never go there, there's a deep dark valley between." From the shadows, I seemed then to hear a small voice, "Oh joy of all joys, could it be?" Ah yes, for he said, "I've got something to say. So lean a little closer to me. Lean a little closer to Jesus. My child, I have ever loved thee. But alone you can't go through this valley below. So lean a little closer to me. Child, there's but one path, through the shadows below. And faith's light, sometimes can't be seen. But hold to my hand, and together we'll go, through the deep dark valley between. When Broadways confuse you, to turn you aside, then keep your eyes ever on me. There's peace in the valley, if you'll just abide, and lean a little closer to me. Catherine had a close friend, by the name of Virginia, so when their third daughter was born on October 11, 1952, they named her Virginia Gay, and called her Jenny. Ray worked as a bulldozer operator. He was very much in demand, as there was a lot of building going on in beautiful Hot Springs. It was a national park, well known for its natural hot mineral springs. People came from all over the world, to take the hot mineral baths, and to drink the water. Gambling was also an attraction in the city. A great many celebrities entertained in the popular nightclubs and gambling arenas. It was also a haven for notorious gangsters and mobsters, such as Al Capone, Charles Bugsy Malone, and Owen Auntie Madden. When Christmas came in 1953, Catherine announced to Ray that he was going to be a daddy again. He began to work extra hours on the bulldozer, to prepare for the happy event. But one fateful day, in 1954, their lives were changed forever. Ray was driving the bulldozer down a long hill, to a different job location, when the brakes went out on the gigantic machine. The farther downhill he went, the faster his speed increased. The highway intersected at the bottom of the hill. Unable to turn at that speed, the dozer jumped the highway, and Ray was thrown out. The dozer crashed down upon him, crushing his body. Miraculously he lived, but spent the next 6 months in the St. Joseph Hospital, in a full-body cast. He became a clockwatcher, waiting for his next pain medication. The injections of a strong narcotic, called Demerol, just wasn't enough to kill the pain, so his buddies began to sneak alcohol into the hospital for him. He would drink it between the Demerol shots, to subdue the pain, until time for the next injection. If the nurses suspected it, they kept it to themselves, because they knew how excruciating the pain must be for him. Besides, they all liked Ray. They all became well acquainted with him, during his long stay at St. Joseph. Ray was a pleasant patient, and not too demanding of their time. He was funny, and they enjoyed his company. Some of them even spent their breaks in his room, so they could hear the stories he'd tell. He composed entertaining poems, which he would recite to them. Chapter 7. The Comedian. A Buck for a 20-cent Drink. By Ray Lindsey. I will see you tomorrow and pay what I owe, for today I'm a little bit short. I stopped by the bar and paid $6.85, for $1.15 nort. The waitress came by, and said, "See here now, sir, I work here for tips, understand?" So I reached in my pocket and flopped my last buck, on the little old greasy-topped stand. Then I said, "Now I hope that you're all satisfied, that I ain't got a dime to my name." Then the tender, that weighed about 400 pounds, smiled broadly, and said to the dame, "It's a shame that he's got such an innocent face, and it seems that he's never done ill. I suppose now someone will write home to his folks, and tell them that he never will. For he's now above, or wherever they go, with the tightwads who've flown o'er the brink. Who won't give a dime for a Madonna's caress, or a buck for a 20-cent drink." Lady from the Lonely Hearts. By Ray Lindsey. Dear Lady from the Lonely Hearts, I got your note today. And finally read it over, which took about all day. Of all the good things you possess, there's not a cause to be. A day you should live single, so why then write to me? You said men chased and you could not shake them by trick or stunt. The story true, is in the chase. The men were out in front. Paul and Silas. By Ray Lindsey. Paul and Silas preached the word, and caused their deeds to stink. But got an awful beating, and wound up in the clink. I'm not complaining, Silas, we've fed the many flocks. Said Silas, neither can I kick, with both feet in these stocks. But way along 'bout midnight, as they began to sing, the whole jail started shaking and the doors began to swing. The jailer came a-running, and said, I must confess, I need the thing you boys have got, because I'm in a mess. At one point in time, the hospital was so full that he had to be moved to a ward, where he shared a room with 6 other men. It was hard to get any rest there for any of them, because there was so much activity going on. One day they brought in a mentally ill man, who kept all the others disturbed by talking to himself, all day. That night, the man sat up in his bed for hours, saying, I gotta catch that train. I gotta catch that train, I gotta catch that train. The other men were about to lose their minds, listening to his incessant chanting. Finally, Ray hollered to him, Man, you are on that train. The poor man looked around, smiled, and said, Well, I am, ain't I? The rest of the night he sat quietly in bed, riding that imaginary train. The other men laughed, and congratulated Ray on his ingenuity. During his hospital stay, on August 23, 1954, Catherine was also admitted to St. Joseph's, to deliver their final beautiful baby girl. They named her Rebecca Day, and called her Becky. The hospital staff allowed Catherine to bring Becky up the 2 floors, to meet her daddy. That was a happy day. Catherine took all the girls to see their daddy as often as she could. It was always an adventure, as they had to ride the city bus. Nita was a very responsible 11-year-old, so she helped her mom with the younger kids. The hospital stay was the longest 6 months of their lives. Ray's cast was finally reduced to a half-body cast, from the waist down, and he was released to go home with a hospital bed, which they set up in the living room. By this time, he had become very dependent on alcohol. Unwanted Men. By Ray Lindsey. Standing by the window of a jail cell, watching down below as crowds go by, hoping I might catch a glimpse of loved ones through the tears of pain-filled, bloodshot eyes. Somehow though, I know I shall not see them. Satan stole that chance, long long ago, when I became a victim of the bottle, the needle and the pill, that made it so. Standing there, mid-surging tides of heartache, thinking of the happy days we'd known, when heart cords bound us so close to each other. Our lives were never counted as our own. But somehow Satan saw the tiny entrance, and now the gap between grows rapidly. The acid tide that flows from hell's dark corners has sailed my ship out to an obscure sea. A pain-racked body, lying by the highway, crushed, to never straighten up again. Months and months they pierced my veins with needles, hoping they might stem the awful pain. But how I wish that they had let me suffer. There might have been a way to stand the pain. But there's no way to stop these awful tremors, and cold sweat falling like a summer's rain. In haunts of sin, I see the gravestone faces, their epitaphs inscribed by Satan's quill, forever doomed to work for any wages, to fill the devil's cup, the pushers till their woeful cries disturb night's stillest hour, while staring at the ceiling up above, when through a rift in clouds of marijuana appears a vision of the ones they love. You'd think they are devoted to destruction, to see them trade their gold for such returns. You see them rush to buy a burning castle, to dig among the ashes of its ruins. So now they live from one fix to another, and back to haunts of sad, unwanted men, where short delights will soon become their terror, and gnawing pain is certain to begin. Then from the streets below a voice rose softly. Come listen to the words I have to say. These hands that bear the nail prints wait to touch you. My thorn-crowned brow still bleeds for you today. If not for you, there would have been no Calvary. I bore the very smallest pain you feel. 'Twas for your transgressions I was wounded, and surely, by my stripes, you are healed. With 4 little girls, and an incapacitated husband to care for, Catherine was forced to move them into the home of Ray's parents, Jacob and Ida Lindsey. The Lindseys had bought a large duplex home in Hot Springs, so each family had their privacy, but were still close by to help. Catherine was extremely grateful to her in-laws. She loved them like the mother and father that she had lost, so long ago. The days were long, as Ray fought with pain and depression. He worried about Catherine. She was so overworked. She took such good care of him, as he lay helplessly in bed. Not only that, but she had a new baby to nurse, and a 2-year-old underfoot. Nita and Sandy were in elementary school, and she didn't ignore their needs. She made sure they had clean pressed clothes to wear, and their hair had to be washed and curled, every night. And oh, the mountains of diapers, and other laundry to be done, on an old wringer washing machine. Not to mention the cooking and general housework. But she did it all with love and grace. He loved her so much. He helped in the only way he could. By entertaining 2-year-old Jenny. Catherine would sit Jenny up on his casted belly, and he would pass the time telling his little girl fairy tales and Bible stories, and nursery rhymes. He taught her to sing all the little songs from Sunday school too. It helped him take his mind off the pain a bit, but there were many long hours that he lay there, wondering how long a beautiful woman like Catherine could continue to love an invalid like him. Ida and Jacob helped out as much as they could, and sometimes, friends from church would drop in with a casserole or something, to help Catherine with meals. His buddies continued to visit, and bring him the booze that Ray had become dependent upon. They brought along mints, to disguise the smell of alcohol on his breath. He would drink it quickly while they visited, so that they could take the empty bottles with them, when they left. He felt guilty deceiving Catherine, his parents, and church friends. But, the pain relief it gave him was too hard to resist. Drinking was a sin in the eyes of the believers, so at night, when everyone else was sleeping, Ray would talk to God, and confess his sins, praying that God would forgive him. The Potter's House. By Ray Lindsey. In stillest hours of the night, I chanced to pass a place. The humble wayside potter's house, a man of simplest grace. I peeked inside to search the source of love that I could feel, and saw the gentle form that stood beside the potter's wheel. A warm glow from the window came, inside I heard a call. "O Father, bring the vessel that was broken from its fall. Now silver gold I covet not, for works that I have wrought. But honored vessels they remain, those who by love were bought. But those that should be broken, and feel their shattered pain, I stand beside the potter's wheel, to make them o'er again. I'll not cast out, in any wise, a broken trembling soul, that brings his vessel broken, again to be made whole. I saw him as he stooped to lift a vessel marred and broke. I saw him place it on the wheel, I heard the words he spoke. He said, Dear Father, guide my hand, to make it o'er again. I love this vessel that you made, and feel its shattered pain. You saw this vessel, ere 'twas made, you know its every line. The making, Father, was your own, the mending, now is mine. So thank you, for the broken things, I know they're dear to thee. But when I mend them, they become a vessel dear to me. For in the potter's house there stands, a wheel for but one thing. To mend the broken vessel, and to make the bearer sing. A vessel, stained and broken, with not a slight appeal, again will useful, lovely be, if placed back on the wheel. God was faithful and true to his word. He provided the family with all their needs daily. Ray received disability, and they were given government commodities, which were basic foods such as cheese, rice, powdered milk, etc. They never had to ask for help, yet they lacked for nothing. Many times, people would just hand Catherine money, saying they were sent by God, so she couldn't refuse it. The doctors had said there was little hope of Ray ever walking again, but he was determined to be independent. Above all, he wanted to provide for his family. He didn't like the shame he felt of living under his parents' roof, and accepting help from the government. So once the cast came off, he worked extra hard on his rehabilitation. Not many men could take the unbearable pain that he endured. At that time, the doctors had never heard of replacing hip joints, so he was left without a ball and socket, which made one leg about 5 inches shorter than the other. He had to walk on his tiptoe, on the short side, and still had a very bad limp. It broke Catherine's heart to see him in pain, but she too was strong, so she helped him with his exercises, and encouraged him. She admired, and loved him so much. They strengthened one another with their love. Remembering. By Ray Lindsey. I remember the year, 'twas 41, and I didn't have a dime of my own. But I had by my side, a treasure that made me, the richest man, I'd ever known. The greatest worry, I had in my life, was to hurry and get the day done. So I could get home, to the prize of my life, that was love, and laughter and fun. When we go hand in hand, by a little perch stream, if we caught some, well that was okay. And I'm wishing just now, I could trade what I have, for one of those sweet yesterdays. And so, if today, I could have one request, I'd lay flat, the memory of sin. And give me her hand, and let us go back. And do it all over again. When Ray was finally able to get around on crutches, he figured he would try his hand at sales. He scraped a little money together, and bought a truckload of used work clothes, at wholesale price. Then he set up tables on the corner lot of their house, at Malvern and Grand Avenues, and sold the work shirts and pants, a piece at a time. Word soon got around that he had good merchandise, at cheap prices, and before long he had sold them all. He then took the profits, and bought another load. Next, he bought a load of used shoes, and did the same with them. Eventually, he got into the wholesale business, and began selling truckloads of merchandise to small stores, around the country. He threw away the crutches, and used only a cane to balance his short leg. But he had a severe limp, and lived in constant pain, for the rest of his life. He wrote the next 3 songs, that seemed to be inspired by his traveling sales business. Nothin' But a Good Road. By Ray Lindsey. Well, it's nothing but a good road, nothing but a good road, when I walk this road, I never walk alone. And there's a lot of comfort, great peace and comfort when I sit down, to rest beside the cornerstone. Well, I was on a one-way road, shouldering a heavy load, and my burdens seemed a lot more than I could bear. When a sweet voice spoke to me, change directions and you'll see, that I'll lift your heavy burdens and your care. When I couldn't get up for going down, nothing but troubles and woes I found, and my feeble light had gone so strangely dim. Then I dropped that heavy load, on that troubled one-way road, fell upon my knees and gave my life to him. Now I'm so glad I dropped my load, on that troubled one-way road, and my life will never, 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 never be the same. Now I don't play in Satan's hall, I got a new court, and I got a new ball, for he's changed it all, and made it into a brand new game. Oh, I'd like to say more about this road, where I dropped my heavy load, and the scales fell from my eyes so I could see. Now it's step by step, and day by day, joy and peace all along the way. For I'm walking with the man from Galilee. Salvage Dealer by Lindsey. There was a man who fell one day, on the way to Jericho. The thieves had stripped and left him there to die. The crowd self-righteous all agreed, they knew he'd end up so. And with a sneer they each one passed him by. But then one day a man passed by, they called the Nazarene. And saw him in the dust, there where he lay. He stooped and raised the weakened frame, and poured in oil and wine. And bound his wounds and sent him on his way. Salvage dealer he likes to deal in broken wasted things. Twisted broken bodies, wasted lives and even sparrows' wings. Shattered vessels, gently taken to the potter's stand, gently there remolds them, that's the story of the salvage man. Scars were in the hands that lifted up the man that day. And on his brow were marks left there by thorns. The man said, "Sir, why waste your time to save a wretch like me?" But he said, "'Twas for this cause that I was born." The man said, "Sir, I am a thief, my sins are black as night. And for my guilt there is no earthly price." The Nazarene just smiled and said, "Fear not, son, today you have a place with me, in paradise." Lord, I'd like to make a trade with you. By Lindsey. Lord, I read in your book, that you have riches. That the cattle, on 1,000 hills, are thine. Now I've got a lot of things that I'm not needing. And I'd like to have what's yours, if you'll take mine. In your Father's house it says there's many mansions. I suppose the cabin that I have would do. But it has no streets of gold, or walls of jasper. So, I'd like to make a trade with you. Well, I bought a load of sins from one called Satan. For he made them look so very good to me. But I soon found, that no one else would take them. But the one who died, upon the cruel tree. I admit, I made a very bad trade, Lord. But at the time, it seemed the very thing to do. Now since I've heard about, a cleansing stream from Calvary. Lord, I'd like to make a trade with you. You said to bring them all, to Calvary's mountain. That you'd meet me by a cross, the Romans made. And regardless of how worthless my possessions. If I'd leave them there, you'd gladly make the trade. No one else would take these sins as black as midnight. Wash them in his blood and make them white as snow. No one else would give his life to do this trading. So Lord, there's just no other place for me to go. Lord, I hope you'll take these things that I'm not needing. For they only tend to break my heart in two. And they separate me from my blessed Savior. So, that's why, I'd like to trade with you. Well, I've traded in the highways, and the byways. And I've traded in the markets overseas. But the strangest, and the best trade that I've made, Lord, is the one I made with you, upon my knees. For my tumble-down shack I've got a mansion. For my saddened heart, the joy comes pouring through. For my troubled mind there's peace just like a river. I'm so glad, I made a trade with you.